Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. This is Dr. Kendra Albright from Kent State University, and it is my pleasure to have with us today, do you go by Tony or Anthony? Which is your
Um, Tony is fine. Anthony is kind of formal, so Tony is fine.
So when you sign your signature, you go by Dr. Anthony Rhem, is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, much formal, you know.
Well, you earned that doctorate, and so I'm going to introduce you as Dr. Anthony Rhem, and he is with us today to talk about some technology that he has expertise in. But before he starts talking about that, I just want to invite you to tell us all about how you got into KM and what's your background, and just tell us about who you are.
Okay. Wow, that's a loaded question. Let's just start back in college, right? So I came to Purdue University with the ideal of majoring in computer science. And that's what my love has always been in computer science. And got accepted. And my November, my senior year in high school. But before I even stepped foot on Purdue's campus, I met with a gentleman named Dr. Cornell Bell. And he convinced me to move over to the School of Management and be able to take advantage of a scholarship there. And also, told me I can also have a double major and do management and computer science and be just that much more well-rounded. That was a very good decision because I was able to have that management focus and computer science and technology background. So from there, fast forward a few years, and this was I graduated in 1982 from Purdue University. A couple of years later, I went to DePaul University in Chicago, where I went for my master's degree, and I majored in this master's in computer science. So I went all computer science, and my concentration was artificial intelligence. So this was from 85 to 89. So just think about how artificial intelligence was or was not back then. We did a lot of expert system work, understanding neural networks, programming in Lisp and Prolog, things of that nature. So I've always had a love for technology since high school, and it's kind of evolved over time. And when I finished my master's program in 1989, I concentrated primarily on AI companies, doing expert system work with different vendors, Neuron Data, AI. I had a software program called ADS, and I did actually consulting work. So I'm back up a little bit. So in 1990, I started my own consulting practice, A.J. Rhem Associates, which I still have today. And I formed partnerships with these vendors, and it's primarily myself and my expertise going out, working with them, working with their salespeople, doing demos of their products with the salespeople, trying to sell clients on what their software is doing and the expertise that we have to help them implement. And that was pretty successful. And I was doing that and just evolving over time. And that was what in the early 90s, right? Like 1990, 1991. So you fast forward to 1999, 1998, 1999, I'm foggy on the year now, but I got involved with something called knowledge management. I was introduced to that. I was in Washington, D.C. A colleague of mine, well, he's a colleague now, but he was, he's still a mentor, Larry Metzger and Dr. Larry Metzger and Dr. Jesse Bimley at the time introduced me to the seminar on knowledge management. They said, Tony, your background in AI, expert systems, this will be great for you to get some understanding of. And I just, man, just I said, wow, this knowledge management stuff is amazing. Because to me, if I go back and talk about my management focus and computer science focus at Purdue to my AI and computer science focus as a master's program, I thought that put that together, right? I thought, okay, this is all about knowledge. This is about, I mean, AI is about, specifically expert systems is about codifying knowledge and making that knowledge available. But it's not, all these things are, machines, we can mimic how people think. And so from an expert system, rule-based sort of thing perspective, it was mimicking intelligence. So it's in that artificial intelligence pot, that discipline, which multidisciplinary science. And so knowledge management became a way to put this management wrapper around it and say, okay, we have technology, which is great, but knowledge management really focuses on the people and the process aspect of delivering knowledge to the right people at the right time in the right context. And so the technology really talks about, or really enables that, this distribution across your organization. Technology is an enabler for knowledge management, because we can really do knowledge management on pencil and paper, right? Storytelling, you hear about storytelling a lot, and that's a key to do knowledge transfer. So it's all those things you can do without technology, but technology is a incredible enabler for knowledge management, and it allows more people to interact with others, through communities of practice, access to content and other knowledge, not only knowledge artifacts, but also the people that have developed these artifacts and understand that tacit or that knowledge inside the person, which is still an issue. We still can't codify all of that knowledge within the person, but you can, through these systems that we have, marry the two, the person and the artifact that's been built. So I saw that as, wow, this is pretty cool that we can use systems to kind of distribute that knowledge. And so I was knee deep in knowledge management for like 10, 12 years. So to about, I would say 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. And with the advent of big data, more computing power, so I'd made another pivot back into the AI world, and specifically machine learning, because I have a pet peeve. I don't like when people lump everything into AI. I mean, that's great. It's AI. However, I've been taught AI is a multidisciplinary science that includes robotics, natural language processing, expert systems, neural networks. That's different flavors of machine learning. I mean, I can give you the red pill. We can take this rabbit hole as deep as we want to go, because AI is an ever encompassing set of disciplines. And so I like for people to be more specific. When you say AI, what part of AI are you talking about? Mm-hmm. But now, as AI has evolved, and we have generative AI now with creating more text or images from text, and using large language models and creating images. So it's still evolving science. It's going to continue. And if you look at a lot of the basis for a lot of artificial intelligence programs and products, it has a layer of machine learning, some type of algorithm that has increased the level of mimicking thought and decision and rendering decisions by the computer. So that in itself has led me more to take a deeper dive not only into AI but machine learning, but also the ethical and responsible nature of applying this and using it. Because AI, where it's has so many benefits, it will accelerate bias. It will accelerate the data that is given to train it. It will accelerate those imperfect pieces of it, right?
Mm.
And it would, when left unchecked, it will render decisions that you're not intending to do. And we know that it has an effect in the way people hire, healthcare. I mean, it's in a multitude of industries, so we really have to be able to use it more responsibly. We have to understand what the ethical nature of this software and these products are, and not release a lot of AI products before we need to into the public space, because it does promote a level of irresponsible use, and if it's not properly tested, it will create a level of bias and discriminatory decisions to certain groups. And we hear all the time about the imagery of generative AI, and someone said, "Well, I have a picture. Can you make this more professional looking?" And the professional looking picture transforms that person from their nationality to somebody being of general European descent. You know, a white person that doesn't even as a white version of that minority group.
Right.
And so is that ethical? Is that no? It's not ethical. Is that so? Does that shows a lot of bias in the results of the decision? Yes, it does. And so, to me, that's irresponsible for a company to release software like that when you haven't properly tested it. So if you would tested it properly on different diverse groups, you will see that the results are not what they intend they should be. And so, that's sort of my journey, encapsulating that from undergrad to graduate to working, and my Ph.D. concentration is in knowledge management. So we go full circle. I have a level of technology base in what I do, but I also have this management and understanding of process and people, and how that works to deliver results. And I always look at technology and AI in particular as having a human in the loop. That's why I say more human-centric AI, and that's what I push. That's what I look for. That gives us a level of transparency and explainability in our AI solutions, which is incredibly important. So that has served me well, having both of those together. And the other thing that because I'm one of those crazy people that love this stuff, I also write. I've written a few books in knowledge management. I've contributed to a few others. I've written several chapters and articles on AI. So that's sort of what I do.
I have two of them right here.
Oh,
I
wow.
Knowledge Management and Practice and Essential Topics in Information Architecture.
Well,
And
thank you very much.
well, you're very welcome, and they're both excellent books. I'm really, really excited. I haven't read them cover to cover yet because I just got them, but I really am looking forward to reading both of these. One of the questions I want to follow up with you about is the ethical implications of machine learning and AI. I came from library and information science background, and I know we have in our field talked a lot about bias in taxonomies. And those are taxonomies that are built by human beings, which in theory should be about as perfect as you can get. But of course, we know that we have our own inherent biases and we don't always think about those things. And that's the whole point that we're making is we see
Right.
things from our own perspective and may be unaware. So, to sum it up, it takes a village to do a good job on a taxonomy. In machine learning and AI, can we teach those nuances, those heuristics about ethics? What's your thought about that?
Uh, yeah, this is how I attack it. But you got to keep in mind this is a very interesting um, uh, piece of this puzzle. Is that ethics as it aligns to who? Is it U.S. based ethics or is it UK based ethics? Is it China based ethics? Everyone has because of your cultural background and experience has a little different twist on what's ethical.
Right.
So keeping that in mind, I always turn to more of having a diverse team
Mhm.
that will help determine what is actually the ethical standard that we're going to leverage,
Mhm.
right? So we can take it and keep in mind these applications shouldn't be one and done. They should be constantly monitored,
Right.
constantly evolving
Right.
to include the ethical nature of what its purpose is.
Mhm.
So when you decide I'm going to this problem to use AI, so first of all you have a problem that really should be addressed by some nature of artificial intelligence, whether machine learning, robotics, whatever.
Right. Okay.
The next, then you say, okay, if we're going to apply some level of AI to this problem, let's understand what are our requirements for this, and in doing so, we have to structure a team of not only the technical people that understand how to build these systems and write these applications, but also the subject matter experts that understand how and why and what needs to be applied to address the problem at hand or problems at hand based on the requirements that we have uncovered that we want to address that this problem that aligns to this problem. And so you got to have subject matter experts, the technical people. It's important to have someone that understands knowledge and knowledge management because we want to understand the flow of knowledge from the person using the application, and what are they expecting to get out of it? What type of decisions, what insights, right? So you look at personas, what type of people are going to be leveraging this application, or what groups will this application affect? And so you have to have those people on that team as well, and folks that are diverse in cultural background and in scientific and management discipline.
Right.
And I'm not saying have a team of 100 people, but I'm an agilist by nature. So I want to keep my team lean and mean, and from an agile perspective, be able to fail fast and be able to constantly evolve the product, and then determine when, at what point do we release certain things to our users, or and maybe it's an internal software product that is part of another software product. So you have to understand those connections as well. But at the end of the day, it's about understanding that cultural diversity and mindset to be able to apply the ethical and responsible nature of that application. And it starts with that team, and then understanding what data do we need to include to actually train. If you're using machine learning to train the model properly with the proper data, only the data that you need to solve the problem or set of problems based on the requirements, and make sure that data is curated and scrubbed for any privacy, any stereotypical bias within the data. That's a tedious, and it could be a long drawn out process. But you got to get those people to understand that, oh, this data is perpetuating a bias that is wrong and against this particular group. We need to be careful with that. We need to remove this data from our consideration, because we don't want to perpetuate that within our program, and then you get decisions that are skewed, and you have the possibility of being sued. Quite, you know, that could be a drastic situation. If you're sued because of your application, that can bring down your whole organization if it's something that egregious, right? So you really, that's really should be essential in what and how you develop AI applications, and the fact that you need to constantly monitor and test these applications to make sure they are still following your policies of ethical use, ethical development, responsible use, and you know, insights being drawn that are unbiased. So it's this is not easy.
Right. Not to
So
mention, you also are checking to make sure your information or your corpus of documents, for lack of a better word, are you know, accurate. You know, I
yeah,
think about pharmaceutical data
absolutely.
and how careful we have to be with pharmaceutical data, you know, or other, I mean, think about, you know, the space shuttle when we were, you know, in the throes of developing that technology and the measurements of the O-rings and all that sort of stuff, you know, it has to be spot on.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it does. You know, and you mentioned the medical data. You know, one of the areas is clinical trials, and you have reams of documents that have been developed and analysis that have been written that covers these clinical trial. Not, you don't only have the actual raw data that's in a database, but you have the details from the clinical trial reports and studies that have been written. And so if when you leverage machine learning, you want to use a cross section and types of data. You're not only using structural data that's in a database, but you're using unstructured data that's in documents. And so you need to be able to train your algorithm on a variety of data to make sure that it is robust enough to make the type of decisions that you're looking for it to make. And that is key to have a ontology that you can align the data with. And so when you have what we call a common or canonical data model that leverages both unstructured and structured data, and align a proper ontology that be able to connect terms and phrases to make sure you are, when you have an algorithm and go down the different layers of analysis, that the connective tissue, which I call an ontology,
Right.
is able to make sense of information not only in your database, but in your clinical trials, in order to render insights on decisions. And especially if you have, and which we're working on in my organization, is a cancer research tool that we're looking at how to integrate a large language model like the OpenAI API to actually analyze clinical trial data as a part of the corpus of information that we use. So it's important to be able to understand that connective tissue and to know that you're using peer-reviewed, really scrutinized information,
Right.
and not just some willy-nilly off the beaten path information that has not been vetted. And
Right.
so that's also very key.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of take what you're saying and now I'm going to put it um, in a, let's talk about that same technology. And now I'm going to ask you to explain what you just said in terms that a new person can understand. For example, what is an ontology?
Oh, ontology is a map connecting terms, and it could be single words or several words together to understand the relationships between the terms. Um, so ontology, you can, well, shoot, I don't want to throw in another term, but you can also develop taxonomies from
Yeah.
ontologies because you can, it's like a way of connecting terms together to that are have some kind of connective meaning.
Right. It's
And
like taking a taxonomy and showing the relationship between the terms in the taxonomy.
yeah, but an ontology takes it, it's a network of terms, so it can take it deeper.
Yeah.
Ontologies are hierarchical in nature, and you just have, you connecting taxonomies, you connecting several hierarchical, and then you have different types of taxonomies. You can have topical based, you can have subjective, not subjective, but alphabetic, taxonomies. It's a lot of different types of taxonomies you can have. But if you're going by the traditional taxonomy of more of a hierarchical nature, it is aligning terms based on the certain model that you're aligning to that subject. Now, you might have a taxonomy of financial data.
Right.
Then you might have a taxonomy of medical data, but then you may have an ontology of this of the same thing, and it has different deeper layers. So you could think of it as being able to connect different terms together that have a some type of relationship between them. And this is a web of information. And imagine that web of information being used by machine learning model to be able to traverse that and understand the connections. And so or you can look at Chat GPT, for instance. When you type in prompts, the large language model looks at those terms and phrases and starts to match them up and determine which ones relate, and based on what you're asking for, return a set of information based on that.
Right.
So hopefully, well, that's about as I guess basic as I can think of
No, that's
right
good.
now.
That's really good. And a follow-up question would be who who develops the ontology? Is that the a combination of people and machines, or is it a, you know,
Well, it's yes, it's the people, right? It's the but you have, there's folks out here that are ontologists, right? That's what they do. And taxonomists is what they do, connect terms and things together. But you still need that subject matter expert in that area of expertise or discipline that you're analyzing to be able to validate that ontology or validate that taxonomy to make sure those connections are the right connections. What I've what I've done in the past is I've developed a content model. Now I'm taking like a side step, right? So you have your ontologies and taxonomy, but a content model, think of it as more of a technical implementation of a taxonomy or an ontology. So what I do is take a concept like say a lesson learned. Lesson learned has a set of metadata that you want to describe it. And you have a set part of the metadata, you may have some organizational metadata that has that taxonomic structures built in, and you may have some administrative metadata that helps you govern and manage it, all within this concept called a lesson learned.
Mhm.
So a lesson learned concept, which should be aligned to a document or some kind of, it could be a PowerPoint, an image, a Word doc, whatever. It could be part of a larger area called knowledge management.
Mhm.
So knowledge management can contain lesson learned, knowledge article, operating procedure, best practice document. things like that. And you have relationships between them. You may have an FAQ. These are all concepts with metadata and relationships in a map, but it's more still it goes through its stages from conceptual to implementation, but the content model is similar to a data model. If I had a data analyst or a database person that does data modeling, you can take those same concepts. You may have a lesson learned in your database, and your lesson learned may have other data tied to it that you need to align with the metadata and the lessons learned from a content model. And from there, you have your ideal of structured data in a database. Mm-hmm. And then you have your unstructured data, like the document that's really speaking to lessons learned. You have your lessons learned table in your database that has data fields described in there too. And then you have that connection and reconciliation between the two. And that's where going back to that common or canonical data model comes into play. So I do a content model that then I can strip off and build a taxonomy and also evolve into beginnings of an ontology. So that's my mind, that's my mental model, and that's sort of my mind map and how I work. And I know I can use this one thing to develop other things.
Right. Did you happen to see, I'm trying to remember what year it was, Clyde Holsapple developed an ontology for knowledge management?
Yeah.
So I imagine that was quite the undertaking.
Yeah, and this was really cool for me is to see that, I know all the work that will go into it, but to see the results, be like, man, is it really that deep? I mean, and see all the different layers and connections. I'm like, wow. And you start to look at them and say, you know what, that's right. And it's kind of funny. I had when I teach a class in this course in information architecture. And I teamed up with the Knowledge Management Institute and first introduced and taught this class under their knowledge management umbrella. I've since spent time in evolving the class to a little more deeper dive into taxonomies and ontologies. But at the end of the day, the information architecture is a key ingredient for knowledge management and for understanding AI when you're talking about curating data. Right. So that's pretty interesting in itself. Everything is kind of connected. It's not strange to find out. You're looking at one discipline and find out how you can apply it to another.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine seeing a map of ontologies that intersect and revolve, and they're like, it's like a cogs in a wheel, universe is all these ontologies that all overlap at some way or another at different times. Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling to think about the universe of knowledge and how do we organize that, as a librarian. That's always been an issue. And the creation of a good taxonomy is challenging enough. And then to think about doing that as an ontology, where you do explain the relationships between the terms and phrases and go deeper, as you say, in those deeper layers, is just itself is mind-boggling to think about being able to do that. And the idea of an agile approach with a team that's also looking for data accuracy and bias and security issues. I mean, there's so many things to, it's a real challenge. That's why, I know with machine aided indexing, there's always been that argument about whether humans are better or the machines are better. And I know the last time I heard was that machines were getting pretty good, and that's been a long time ago now. But I know from a librarian perspective that we never quite felt that way. that people are the best judges because of the very heuristic knowledge, that tacit knowledge, as we talk about in knowledge management, to make the decisions about what should be included, what shouldn't be included, and the way in which those terms and phrases are used. Yeah.
Right.
For the very
It,
ethical reasons you brought up. Yeah.
it was really enlightening for me when I started doing this research on non-small cell lung cancer and looking at the different cancer ontologies. And they're out there. And the connectiveness from understanding, stage 1 through stage 4, and then you have different things within stage 1. Then you may have stage 1A or stage 1B that then have several other concepts related to it. Then if you have introduced this, it peels out to this other web of information. It's just like, okay, I mean, I'm not a physician, I'm not a cancer doctor, anything like that, but I did learn a lot just
Oh,
by studying the ontologies
yeah.
of non-small cell lung cancer. It's just, oh man, this is, and so that's when you appreciate the technology piece, right? So if
Right.
you have someone already develop these ontologies, the power of AI will just, it's mind-boggling what we can do from a computer science perspective and AI, analyzing those ontologies much faster and more efficient than a human can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you need your subject matter expert again to analyze the decisions that are made from that. But to be able to do that with the software, AI, and machine learning in particular, I think is where we get a lot of the benefit from.
Yeah. It's interesting that some, controlled vocabularies like the medical subject headings, the mesh headings for National Library of Medicine can be helpful as a starting point that you can then modify and revise as needed for whatever it is that you're looking for. That's always been our experience in building any kind of a vocabulary or a taxonomy, is if there's something that already exists that you can build on, it's helpful.
Oh
But
my God, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Phew. Anyway, it's a very complicated topic that you are involved in. So I would just at this point ask you about your view of AI. I know you said the relationship about the information architecture is so important. And I know in our other conversations that we've talked about IA and how important that is in AI. And so I just thought I'd give you a moment to uh, talk a little bit more about that, the information architecture piece, and how it relates to AI and what you think about it.
Yeah, I'll go back several years. This is, I'll say around, man, 2010. Working with companies, and I was telling them about, information architecture is the key to a better user experience. That's on one side of the fence. And, you building a application that will get content and knowledge to the right people, but in a consumable way, structured that you can navigate to it very easily or search for it and find it. Information architecture is the key for that. And that's why it's so essential for knowledge management applications to have a sound information architecture that actually provides that user experience that is necessary to actually find and use the knowledge within your organization, right? That is tied to. And so I've worked with a myriad of content management, knowledge management systems from a lot of different companies, Oracle, IBM, OpenText, Microsoft, SharePoint. I mean, there's a multitude. Now, if you look at information architecture and look at it a little differently from not just from a user experience perspective and delivering knowledge in a certain way, but also understand what are you actually doing with information architecture? You're actually structuring content. Now you can use DITA, which is the Darwin Information Typing Architecture, which is good for modularization of content. It's fantastic for that. Some tools actually have this DITA piece as a built in, but that is information architecture is essential for curating content, getting the right structure of the content and being able to leverage that structure in order to find insights within information. And so the same concepts we use to kind of structure content to make it consumable, you can build around the aspects of the content in order for it to be used by a machine learning program. So I talked about a content model earlier. In the content model, we have metadata tied to each of the content concepts, which you have descriptive, which could be the title and description, and maybe a couple of different other items that a type. They speak to the descriptive metadata. You have the organizational metadata as well, which is maybe the topic, subtopic, all those some of those taxonomic pieces within the sort of structural metadata. And then in your implementation of that, you have your administrative metadata, which may be tied to a workflow or tied to records management and things like that. But all those pieces, you look at the descriptive and organizational piece, helps inform a machine learning program on what that content is about. You can use text analytics to create additional metadata based on the text within the document as well. And text analytics is a great technology to work with machine learning in order to understand the textual nature of certain, of documents that can add to your already structural data. So information architecture plays a key role in understanding those pieces, but not for like a user interface, but for a different purpose of understanding that content itself, the nature and intricacies of that content to be used by a machine learning program. I know IBM Watson has a platform that allows you to do a lot of that content curation right on that platform. I think more vendors are doing this too. So enable you to do some of that content curation and organization and understanding to then so you can include that in the corpus of data that your machine learning application can leverage. So information architecture is that key, that human piece that is doing that work to get that understanding, so those machines, computers, and programs can leverage it to use it the right way. So that's in the information architecture class course that I have. I keep saying class, but the course that I put together. It's a 3-day course, and it dives somewhat into that. Right, I do the typical user interface pieces, knowledge management, how to use a knowledge management strategy, how it's used in a enterprise content management strategy, how it's used in curation of content for machine learning. It's a lot of the concepts that we talk about in the course that can be leveraged there too. So I just try to do a soup to nuts immersion of that within a 3-day period, which is challenging in itself, but you try to keep the exercises and the work within the course interactive and engaging, so people can kind of latch onto that. What is sometimes you got to break it down in a moment to its bare bones and say, okay, it's like X, so someone else can relate to it, and then be able to then understand it and apply it. So
That's awesome. It makes me think about something that I've been observing. We have 5 master's degree programs in our school. We have 2 MLIS, Library and Information Science, one for K-12 and one for everything else. Then we have the MS, Master of Science in Knowledge Management, Master of Science in Health Informatics, and Master of Science in User Experience. And I'm getting this sense, it's anecdotal. I'm just starting to get this sense from our students that there is a trend happening that's bringing user experience and knowledge management together more and more. And it's not, in this case, I don't think it's about the content so much as it is about the design, the user interface. But regardless, I think they're both really important. I mean, you know, in my computer science class to build a web search engine back in the dark ages, you know, we had to have, I was on a team of four, and three were computer science people. And, they did this very functional search thing that, had no instructions, no design interface at all. And I'm going, could we make the font a little bigger? And
Okay.
how about relevance feedback? And so it's funny how important these things are in coming together. And I think that that's one reason why we're seeing this. It's like Chat GPT, just for an example. When you go there to search, it's just your basic search box. It's
Right,
it's
right.
the response that you get, and the immediacy with which you get a very substantial response, and it's usually pretty on target, is my experience with it. Of course, but anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's the other thing we talk about in the course
yeah,
is actually prompt engineering. How do you structure the prompt to get the information you want?
right.
So that's incredible. And that's information architecture as well, or information engineering. I
Yeah,
call it information architecture. You're architecting a prompt which is information based in order to obtain information, just like
information
you
retrieval.
know, yeah, just like search, right?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
how your search has to be structured a certain way, and then the data has to be structured in order for you to be able to get the answer you want. Same concept.
Right, it is really, and I love seeing these two fields sharing so much. They're not merging, I don't think, and I don't think we would want them to necessarily, but it just goes to show that the interdisciplinary nature of your background that you talked about has been so applicable to the progress or the direction that KM has been going in, because this is exactly what I'm seeing too. You're a unicorn, as they say.
I just like this stuff. I guess I'm the one thing I guess my superpower, if you call it that, I'm able to look at technologies and look at the connectiveness of the technologies, being able to blend them together. Say,
Right.
how can I use one technology to enhance another, or a
Yeah.
process or a concept,
Yeah.
right? So I've learned how to not only interpolate inside of something, but extrapolate from
Yep.
outside.
Yep.
And so I think that's my superpower, to be able to extrapolate and blend things together and say, okay, and create something new, or evolutionary, or just um, a step up, and a not total brand new, but maybe just another version of something that makes it better.
Yeah.
And
Get
a lot of
insight.
companies look at that, yeah,
Yeah.
and to blend technologies together and bring them together to make it better.
Yeah. Boy, I could go on talking and talking about this stuff with you, Tony. I have a million questions I'd love to pick your brain about, and I hope I get to continue doing that. In the meantime, for the purposes of this interview, I just wanted to shift us to the wrap up, and ask you, you've been in this business for a while, and you've got 3 degrees or more, plus all the other kinds of education that you got from here and there. Um, if you were, our students, some of them have experience, some of them are currently working in KM, some of them have never worked in KM. But if you were going to talk to people who were starting out in KM, getting in their early parts of their career, what kind of advice would you give them?
A couple of things. One is to read, research, look at, and there are several prominent colleagues in the field, and look for their books, right? And do some reading, do some research, take a deeper dive and some understanding. Align yourself with some of these working groups, or what do you call them? Societies where you can reach out and interact with some of the experts in the field to get a better understanding. Ask questions. I mean, ask questions. This is constantly evolving, and know where you want to go, because one, you can get a formal education, get your degree in CAM only from a few institutions, Kent State being one of them. But also look at how you can apply what you learn at organizations or through maybe a deeper certification course. You know, like Kendra, like you said, it's I dedicated myself to in this field because I love it, right? This is my passion. And with anything, I mean, I played basketball in college, and so I know you got to put in the time. That's my other passion, right? Basketball, and putting the time to learn and grow. Same thing in business and anything you want to do. And so I continued my education. I continued to get certifications and certified in Agile. I went through the MIT AI leadership course and got certified in that. And because it took me a while to kind of figure out, should I do this? Because would it teach me anything I don't already know? But the power in that program were the people I was working with in my cohort, and they were amazing, you know. And we learn off each other, and the professors there were very good. They give you the concepts, and of course, at this stage of your career, you take the concepts and you run with it. You know how to do research, you know how to take deep dive and things, but your education doesn't stop when you get your undergrad or master's or PhD. It still continues because things don't stay still. And you have to have a passion for what this is. And so if you start out in this field, understand that, you know, this is something you're going to constantly learn, constantly being that lifelong learning, mindset. And look for mentors, look for additional information. There are a lot of I got a blog I've been doing since 2008. There's a lot of blogs out there on KM. There's a lot of different listservs. Stan Garfield which you know very well, has a listserv in SIKM that you have a lot of prominent thought leaders are in that group. I mean, there's KM mentors and information everywhere. So if you just are curious about KM, look for those groups you can join. Look for doing your research and the books. You can pick up a few books to get a better idea of what KM is and the different areas in which you can get involved in KM. The different jobs that are available, the job roles that you can have in KM. So that's what I would advice I would give, and understanding that this is a lifelong learning situation, and you gotta have passion for it. I mean, like I said before, I'm maybe one of those crazy people. I love this stuff, and
Well, we'll all be locked up together.
yeah, because I'm working, I'm consulting with people, I'm writing, I'm speaking at conferences. I'm constantly learning.
Right.
Because it makes me better as when I teach, because I bring real world experiences to the classroom, as well as the foundational knowledge you need to understand the concepts. Understanding and application, that's the key.
And with that note, now I've taken off my background, I can put this up here. This is one of Tony's books, Knowledge Management and Practice, and there's his name at the bottom. It's a really, really, I love the combination of text and pictures, which are, sorry about the dog, very helpful. And this is the other one that I got, which is about information architecture, and again by Tony. And I'm going to pause for 1 second just to make sure my dog left. So I just want to take this moment to say thank you. This is wonderful stuff. You have been a wonderful participant, and I thank you for your time, and I look forward to ongoing conversations with you. Thank you, Tony.
All right. Thank you, Kendra. It was a pleasure. Like you said, we can talk about this all day.
And we will.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.